Hey everyone. The saga continues with my old Sahara wood stove made by Drolet or Drolet. If I go into the website here and look up my specific stove, this is the parts part of the website. I go under Sahara, and right here, as you can see, is the brush Sahara wood stove brush nickel door. So I go over here and click on parts, and this is the stove. And I've always used this this little PDF kind of expandable file to find the parts that I would need. So if I increase the photo here, say about to here, and go to find the door here, the side door, the side glass, you'll notice something, or no, you won't notice something. You see this little thing here? This is the metal trim, the brass trim. It has 4 stubs sticking out of it, and it goes into this inside cast right here, and of course it's got the stubs to accept the top, bottom, left and right, like I mentioned in past videos. And then you see the nuts here, small little black nuts that go onto these little shafts, these bolts that stick off of the brass finish. And then you see the glass right here that goes inside the inner black trim. And then you see the gasket that wraps around the glass. What you won't notice, and what I'd failed to recognize, was where is the bolts or the screws that mount this, the whole 3 pieces, to the stove. They're there because I just took them out yesterday and I discovered this. They're not in this diagram, in this blow-up. This brass trim mounts to this first, this black inner piece that I'll show you shortly. And then this black piece, once this is mounted to this, accepts the glass. The glass just goes into the center with the the fiberglass trim around it to seal it. And then from there, you mount it to the stove, as you see in the diagram. I'll have to decrease this picture here, right here. Let me blow that up. That mounts to the inside. To the inside, there's 4 bolts here. 1, 2, 3, and 4 bolts that you don't see, and they're not listed in the diagram, as we just noticed. However, I removed the 2 glasses because I started to work on the stove yesterday, and I cleaned up. I took out the broken glass. I saved the metal trim. The metal trim stays mounted to this black inner trim that you can see. I know it's just black and white here, but you have to use your imagination. There is no place in the listing that shows, in this glass section, the screw or the bolt, the 4 bolts that hold this glass in. But they are there because I discovered the bolts that I need are 18, listed as 18. And this is the 2 bolts that holds this tray onto the front of the stove where the door is. It's kind of like a place where ash and your hot embers can fall. These 2 bolts are the identical ones that come out of the back inside of this glass, inside of this trim, I should say, and let's this piece go. So now that's why I had trouble, because I couldn't figure out why these bolts weren't long enough to go through this metal plate and yet in the glass and go through the stove. What I received was wrong, but there was nothing listed. If I would have seen it on the diagram, I would have known that this was not the wrong PDF or file or whatever that I was trying to figure out. That this here actually didn't have the parts that I needed listed, and they're $1 a piece. So it would have been, you know, $8 for the 4 bolts, $25 for shipping plus tax. So it was going to come up to about, I believe it was something like close to $46. Anyway, I managed to salvage 7 of the 8 bolts. 1 was missing. It must have just fell off. I don't know where it went. I guess I cleaned it out when I cleaned the stove. So I'm going to take one of these bolts out of this pan here, and put it in. So now we're going to go out and have a look at the repair. I took these pieces off and I soaked them in gas overnight. So you see, I placed this here. You see the metal trim here. The brass trim is attached to the black inner trim, and I didn't know that it was bolted on as per the piece that I received. But nowhere does it say about these bolts here, 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 and here. So I thought I had received the wrong outside metal trim, which was supposed to have longer legs in different positions to mount this right through the stove. So there's one, and there's number 2, and there's the bolts. And they're a special kind of a bolt. They're like a self-tapping, but they're not called self-tapping. I can't remember the name of them. You see, they got kind of like gashes in them, but that's the ones. But they're not listed, only as the tray holder bolts. So let's move on. So here we are in the garage, and as you can see, the glasses are removed, and so we're going to look down here and discover where the replacement part, if you had to order it, that's where they are too. There, the extra 2. So you have to these parts here. This is the only place where this hidden part is listed for the stove. It's not on the diagram, so that's a stove that I could have left in the house, repaired easily enough, because the diagram was wrong. So let me affix the repair. So here I go, removing the trim here, this lip bolt that holds this trim, and there it is, the exact part that I need. And here's one that came out of the door. Just put this down so you can have a look at it. Yep, hidden in the diagram somewhere, but had it been listed, I would not have taken this stove out of service. But now I have a stove for the shed, so let's get at the repair. Now, I'm not exactly sure what you can see, but the bolts are in place. Let's look on the other side of the glass here. I've neglected to take out my flashlight, so but here's the glass install, and the bolt that I borrowed from down here. I have another bolt which is similar. It's just not self-tapping or whatever they call it, and that's just similar to that. So I'll put this bolt back in under the tray here. Of course, the tray ain't going nowhere for some reason. It's pretty solid. I don't know It's not budging, but I will repair that. Okay, there it is. The new bolt ahead. It's not really snug. For some reason, I guess where it's not soft tapping, it must be slightly smaller, so I'll have to find another bolt to go there. But as you can see, that tray is strong enough to be used out here in the shed, so I'll probably just leave that bolt there and leave the other one in place. In case I ever get to replace it, I'll have a spare one. So anyway, let's look at this side left to go. I'll put this side on, but you get the gist of what I had to do. And it's pretty sad that Drolet didn't have their PDF files straightened out, because I would have saved about $2,000. I didn't necessarily have to replace this stove. I do like the stove, it's a good performer, the Sahara, but I certainly will enjoy the newer HT3000 Drolet. But I just wish they could have got their parts information straightened away. And I sent several emails back and forth telling them the problem I had, and they didn't understand. And so they asked me to return the stuff that I didn't need, because they neglected to see what I was sending them in photos. And basically all they would have said, well, no, you don't need to remove that trim. That trim doesn't hold the glass to the stove. There's 4 bolts inside that we can sell you for $1 a piece that you need to replace only. PDF file didn't tell me, and they didn't know, so this is where I am. Wood stove for the shed. Thanks for watching, everyone.